Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. 2 men are behind bars. A woman is dead, and all of this sparks a human trafficking investigation in South Billings.
It all started here at a trailer park on Laurel Road with an altercation, a group beating, and a shot fired. Well, tonight, the 20-year-old woman who showed up at a local hospital earlier this week with that gunshot wound has died from her injuries.
Police say they are treating this death as a homicide, but the 18-year-old woman who prosecutors say pulled the trigger has not been charged.
Instead, the focus is on these men, 38-year-old William Newkirk and 29-year-old Javon King, who are now in custody for assaulting the 18-year-old who fired the gun. Now, both were booked into the Yellowstone County Detention Center on felony aggravated assault charges.
Q2's Andrea Lutz has been sifting through the extensive court documents.
She joins us now to break it all down. Andrea.
Well, prosecutors say the 18-year-old female who pulled the trigger is also the victim of a group beating where Newkirk, King, and the woman who has died and now identified as Kayana Gonzalez played a role. The altercation started Tuesday when Newkirk started pressuring the 18-year-old who has not been identified to date him. She said no. The 18-year-old was driven to this trailer park on Laurel Road. It's that location where authorities say human trafficking could be happening through prosecutors, although they have not identified victims or suspects in charging documents. Gonzalez started to strike the 18-year-old in the face, leaving her with a swollen eye and facial fractures. When she didn't comply with getting out of a vehicle, Newkirk and King also started to beat her. Prosecutors say the 18-year-old grabbed a gun from a center console, intending to fire it in the air to scare them away. As King grabbed the 18-year-old's feet, trying to pull her from the vehicle, that's when the gun went off and a bullet striking Gonzalez. She was loaded into a vehicle and driven to St. Vincent Healthcare for treatment. The 18-year-old got away. Newkirk was arrested on an unrelated warrant, told police he was robbed by the women. He also denies any involvement in human trafficking. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right. Thanks, Andrea.
Well, tonight authorities have released the names of 2 young men who died in a head-on crash in Huntley last night.
The Yellowstone County coroner says the victims are 21-year-old Taylor Larson and 19-year-old Anthony Delio. The crash happened on Highway 312 near Jute Street. Trooper Barry Mitchell tells Q2 it was a near head-on crash. The white Dodge pickup was heading east and moved into the westbound lane, colliding with the blue pickup heading west.
Now, Mitchell says he and other Highway Patrol investigators were on scene today but have not determined why the truck drifted into the other lane. He said no one saw that crash, and that has slowed the investigation.
Well, it's official now. Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte is running for governor of Montana in 2020. Gianforte filed his fundraising paperwork late last night with the state political practices office. He will formally kick off his campaign next week in conjunction with the state Republican Party convention in Helena. Now, the Bozeman businessman is the 4th Republican to join the race for Montana's top job. Democratic Governor Steve Bullock is barred by term limits. Gianforte's primary competitors at this point are Attorney General Tim Fox, State Senator Al Olszewski of Kalispell, and Secretary of State Corey Stapleton. So far, a Democratic candidate has not announced for the governor's race. Gianforte's entry into the governor's race also means Montana's only U.S. House seat will be open and up for grabs next year.
Well, despite previously believing that he met the criteria for the debate stage, Governor Steve Bullock is now missing the mark. The Democratic National Committee is responsible for establishing rules to qualify for the debates, and now it says Bullock doesn't meet either of its qualifying options. Those options are 1% in 3 national or state polls or 65,000 unique donors. The cutoff date to meet that criteria is next Wednesday, June 12th. The Bullock campaign says the criteria was made behind closed doors and has been brought out to single him out. Meanwhile, the DNC says the Bullock campaign has been aware of the poll criteria for months.
The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has tossed out a 2018 Montana federal judge's order that blocked the Keystone XL pipeline.
But that doesn't mean it opens the door for construction to start anytime soon. This ruling applies to a permit that is no longer valid because that permit was voided when President Trump issued a presidential permit for the pipeline in March.
Now, lawsuits have been filed against the presidential permit, and those lawsuits are still blocking pipeline construction. TC Energy, formerly TransCanada, also says it is too late to begin construction this year.
On the weather scene tonight, we were dealing with some warm temperatures today, but Bob McGuire here to tell us where snow is expected to fall in Montana.
It is hard to believe. We had some severe thunderstorms in parts of Montana, and now the next thing behind that is some snow moving in. Let me show you what we're talking about. Welcome to Montana. If you're talking rain and heavy thunderstorms one day and snow the next, here's the current Doppler radar. You can see the showers and thunderstorms all went around the Billings area, but over there by Missoula, you can see the light rain. Over there, anything that's not green is going to be snow. And now take a look. There it is. You see little patches of blue going into the not the Beartooth, but the mountains out there in the west. It looks like probably by Friday evening, morning, you're looking at scattered snow showers kind of coming down the northern Rockies and eventually in towards the southwestern corner of the state. And then look at this. By Saturday morning, look at all the snow moving into the Beartooth, the Pryors, and the Bighorn Mountains. You're looking at scattered rain showers in the plains, but the snow will be moving in here by Saturday. Places like Bozeman and Butte will see some of that snow.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, today marks the 75th anniversary of the largest invasion by air, land, and sea in history. Right in the middle of the commemoration of this epic D-Day invasion is Missoula's Miss Montana. On June 6, 1944, soldiers, planes, and ships from the U.S., Britain, and Canada stormed the Nazi-occupied French beaches of Normandy. Today, Miss Montana furthered her mission. The World War II-era C-47 plane took part in the presidential flyover this morning above Omaha Beach and the coastline where thousands of lives were lost. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania joined French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Bridget at the flyover ceremonies.
Well, there for the ceremonies in Normandy was Billings World War II veteran Bud LeCount, despite having to undergo an emergency hip replacement this week. He took a nasty fall when he arrived in France, but amazingly was still there for the ceremony, although in a wheelchair. And if you saw any of the CBS footage of the president speaking this morning, Bud was right there in the first row behind him. Well, I spent some time with the 96-year-old veteran before he departed for France, and he reflected on what it was like there on Omaha Beach 75 years ago.
I was going to wait and go for the 80th anniversary. But I thought, you know, that's getting pretty damn optimistic here on my part.
We caught up with Bud LeCount preparing to head to the D-Day ceremonies in Normandy for the 6th time in his life.
It's like a magnet.
He first set foot on Omaha Beach on June 7, 1944, the day after the Allied invasion began.
When I landed, the chaos on that beach was just unbelievable and impossible to describe. Oh God, there was more dead and destroyed equipment, trucks burning. A guy can't describe it because you don't see very much of it. First place, you're so damn scared you can't see.
LeCount had already been through a lot before that June day at the beach. A Chippewa Indian, he was taken away from his parents at the age of 6 and sent to the Fort Totten Indian School. He wouldn't see his family again for 9 years.
They were gonna take the Indian out of us and make white folks out of us or something was their intent. So they gathered up hundreds of little kids, 5, 6, and 7 years old. Where I was, there was about 400 little kids there.
At the age of 18, he hopped a freight train from Montana to Seattle, then took a ship to Alaska to work construction on a submarine refueling base in Dutch Harbor.
I was working up there when the Japanese bombed us up there. They really raised hell.
A short time later, LeCount was drafted and assigned to an Army anti-aircraft unit. Just days after his 21st birthday, he was driving a Jeep off a landing craft and mostly underwater onto Omaha Beach, a day he'll remember for a couple of reasons.
When I saw the chaos and realized what we were doing, it scared the living hell out of me. But at the same time, I didn't know they had taken my wife to the hospital in Williston, and I said, and it scared the living sun out of her.
She had a baby during that same time?
Yeah, Same time that I was landing, she was in the hospital with the baby. Yeah.
Ironically, Bud's unit didn't have to fire a shot on the beach that day.
There was no planes. Germany is out of planes at that time.
But he remembers the carnage of the battle, the destroyed equipment, the dead bodies that he saw buried in trenches.
Was it tough after you got home, after seeing stuff like that?
Well, yeah. But it didn't affect me like it did a lot of people. A lot of people just couldn't stand that, you know. I got home and got a job and went to work.
He ranched for 40 years, was married to his wife Venice for 67 years before she passed away. And at the age of 96, he still finds his way to the dance floor regularly.
Bud is always there to dance with all of us gals. Good dancer. He'll do anything for you. He's just a wonderful guy.
I don't know if I can talk about Bud without crying. I love to sit and listen to him and his stories from the time he was 6 years old and was taken away from his family till now when he's 96, and all he's been through and the places he's seen, and he is just an awesome man.
Once I became of age and starting to look into the military, that became a big factor in wanting to follow in my great-grandfather's footsteps and be able to serve in the military just like he did.
In 2013, LeCount was awarded a Legion of Honor medal for helping free France from the Nazis and turn the tide in World War II. One more accomplishment in his long life.
I wound up doing a lot better than I ever dreamed I would. I thought if we could just make a good living for the family, that was it. But I've gone way beyond that, way beyond that. And it's a good feeling, except she should be here to enjoy it.
"75 years after that fateful day at the beach, there is still reason to be grateful for men like Bud LeCount, who made it home to tell the story, and also all of those who didn't. And we're all certainly hoping that Bud will be back on that dance floor again soon. It was just amazing that he was able to make it to the ceremonies today, just 2 days after having his hip replaced at the age of 96. What a guy.
He's made it through quite a bit.
He sure has. He's
Nice
seen a lot
story.
in his lifetime.
Thanks so much, Russ. Well, coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, Senator Jon Tester highlighting and celebrating changes to the VA on a tour here in Montana. We'll hear from him.
And later in sports, football is the fun part of this summer for your Class B All-Stars. Scott finds out what summer jobs they're working.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.